This video is going to demonstrate how to construct one of the trusses of your bridge. The first thing you need is to do this easily is you need your schematic, and then you need a piece of foam. Here I have a piece of pink foam like you would see used in the construction of a house, and they sell this at Home Depot, and you can get this in actually 4x8 foot sheets, and it's about $10. So you might go in with a few students and buy a big sheet and just cut it up. The other thing you can do is you can go to Hobby Lobby and you can buy styrofoam sheets, and they sell that in different thicknesses. I have a piece that's about 2 inches thick, and it is a little more expensive than this pink foam. Pink foam's a little cheaper, so I would say you maybe plan on going in with a few friends and buying some of this pink foam. So then you are going to take your schematic and you are going to lay a piece of wax paper over the top of it. So I have a piece of wax paper. It's laid over the top of my bridge schematic, and then I'm pinning it down at all 4 corners so that the schematic doesn't move. So there's pins going through each of the 4 corners of the schematic. Okay, so I'm going to take my material and I'm going to lay it directly on top of my drawing, and so I've done that, and one end is directly even with an end right here. It's lined up directly even, and then the other end, I'm going to put my hand on it and hold it down. The other end is not even, it's too long, and so I'm going to mark where my member ends. It ends right here, and I'm going to mark with a nice straight line, a sharp pen, where it ends. Then I'm going to pick up my material and I'm going to move my schematic out of the way, and I'm going to cut the material along this line. Okay, so that's the line that I just made with my schematic. So I'm going to take a razor blade and I'm going to cut the balsa wood right at that line. Okay, now it didn't cut exactly even, but cut pretty close. So that's good. You want to have a nice flat line, and this goes right here on my schematic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some pins and I'm going to pin this thing down in the location that it's supposed to be at. So here we go. Here's some pins. I'm putting them on both sides, and just to hold this piece down. That's why you need the foam, because you need to be able to push these pins through something so that it will stay in place. And let's see, that holds it in place pretty good. So the next thing I need to do is I need to mark my my next members that I want to cut. And so the next member that I want to cut is this member, and then I want to cut this member. So I'm going to slide this piece out just a little bit, and I need to find out what these angles are that I'm going to have to cut. And so I'm going to line this piece up with this end here, and then I can use my schematic to draw an exact line showing the angle of my cut. And so here we go. Just going to sketch that line here, and then I'm going to take this piece off and I'm going to lay it down on my cutting board, and I'm going to use my razor blade to cut my wood. There we go. It's a better cut there. Okay, so I've cut it and it's at an angle, and it's at the exact angle that I'm going to place it at on my schematic. Okay, So if we put this back over here and I pull this piece back in place, you'll see that my members are going to fit together really well. So my angles, they fit together. Well, you could probably even do a better job than I did. Okay, so there's not much of a gap here, and I want to push these pieces together. So I'm going to glue right here. I do need to cut my other end. My other end is going to be right here. And so I've marked my cut. If you notice here, I'll put this directly under the camera. You'll notice it is at an angle, and on the picture it doesn't look real straight, but it is straight up and down. And so I'm going to take this off, and I'm going to cut my member with my razor blade. You gotta be real careful. You don't want to break it. You want to cut it. So, okay, so that's cut. Put it back over here, and I'll show you that it fits nice and neat. There you go. So I'm going to have my other member on this side, and I need to cut that now before I glue it down. So I'm going to move this out of the way. I'm going to do another measurement. Another member. And that's my angle. I'm going to cut this. Right along here. Razor blade works really well. You can also use an X-Acto knife, but razor blades are cheaper, so I would say just buy a razor blade. Get a, the drugstore, or you could get a Walmart, or any place that has like sewing or that has shaving equipment. So then I'm going to make my next line right here in the middle. The other thing is, when you're making your lines, if you're unsure, if you make them a little longer, when I mean a little longer, I mean maybe a millimeter longer, it's easy. I mean, you can't, once you cut too much off, you can't add any back on, but if you don't cut enough off, you can always shave a little off later. So if unsure, always make your cut a little bit longer. Okay, now I have my two pieces cut, and I'm going to reposition this bottom member so that it's lined up, and then I'm going to just kind of dry fit my members here, hold them in place. I'm just going to make sure that everything fits nice and tight. Okay, that looks pretty good. That's pretty good. My angle in the middle is lined up. The members are touching each other pretty good. And here on the corners, they're also lined up pretty well. So I'm going to glue this in place. The way you do that is you get your school glue, your Elmer school glue, and you put a dab of glue on the ends where you're going to have contact. And you don't want a whole lot of excess glue. It's almost too much of it. And then I'm going to put this in place. Okay. And then I'm going to put some glue on this end. Make sure it covers your wood completely on the ends. Okay, there's my other piece. And this one in place here. See, it's touching. Okay, so it's not dry yet. I want to make sure that these pieces of wood are touching and that they're tied up against each other, because most of the strength is going to be with the surfaces of the wood touching with very little glue in between. And notice I'm putting pins in place. Once I push these together, like for instance, see this is not pushed together very well, so I'm going to push it together. See, now that's pushed. There's not much space in between there. You don't want any gap here. So I'm going to push it together, and then I'm going to put a pin in right there. And just to hold it in place, I'll put another one here. And then I'm going up to the top here, and I'm making sure everything's nice and even. It's all pushed together really well. And put a piece here. And I'll put a pin right here that's holding those together. And I'm going to add another one just to hold it in place. You want to also make sure that your members are sitting flat against the paper. Everything's nice and flat. This pink foam has a tendency to want to bow, so you want to make sure it's not bowing on you, because if it does, it'll make when the glue is dry, the truss will be bowed. You don't want that. You could even lay something on top of your members just to make sure that they're flat against the paper. These are pretty flat, and it looks like there's not any gap. I'm going to wipe off the excess glue here and then just make sure they're pushed together. I'm going to take this pin out, push them together a little bit harder. Okay. And looks good. Okay, so that is the first three members that are glued together, and I'm going to do the centerpiece in a second.